Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is the rise of Jew hatred in New York City and creating a proper, effective response. Ever since October 7th, 2024, the day Hamas unleashed a modern pogrom against Israel, New York City has been experiencing sustained, increasing Jew hatred, levels of Jew hatred. Hatred that has been unparalleled in the history of the United States of America. While there is clear evidence of the new mayor of New York's disdain, dislike, and distrust of Israel and Jews, it should be just as clear that the election of Mayor Mamdani is the product of this anti-Jewish hatred. Mayor Mamdani himself is not the cause of the Jew hatred. The 2025 mayoral election cycle rode the wave of the post-October 7th anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, anti-establishment sentiment. It is that perverse feeling towards and about Jews that drove people to the polls to vote against establishment norms. That hatred is what propelled Mamdani into Gracie Mansion. The numbers are stupefying. In 2024, there were 976, nearly 1,000 reported incidents of Jew hatred in New York City. The attacks continue. The numbers, however, do not tell the whole story. Jews are being physically attacked, yes. Jewish property and Jewish institutions are under attack, yes. But the overwhelming number of attacks are harassment, especially verbal harassment and intimidation. These attacks are almost always unreported. It should be noted that shouting terrible things about Jews to Jews is not a crime. It's protected speech. It only rises to the level of a crime when that speech contains a threat or when that speech arouses or generates fear, which could then be interpreted as a threat. It should also be noted that this is not the case on university campuses. Campuses are where, on the one hand, students' right to speech are clear, and on the other hand, there are rules that protect students from being verbally intimidated. Shockingly, the further we get from October 7th, 2024, the more hate crimes increase. In January 2025, there were 11 reported hate crimes against Jews in New York City. In January 2026, there were 31. That is an increase of nearly 200%, increased month over month from year to year, from one year to the next. This increase in hate crimes against Jews may well be where the election of Mamdani fits in. Mamdani, who assumed his position on the first day of 2026, may have had a significant influence on this. A strong personality, a charismatic presence, Mayor Mamdani has set a tone. Anecdotally, I calculate that per month, the number of verbal attacks against Jews realistically must reach the thousands. I come to that number from the plethora of people who have reported to me about the hatred and hateful attacks and incidents, the hate-spewed outbursts that they've experienced on streets and subways and stores and elevators in New York City. Not only has there been a rise in incidents of Jew hatred manifested in physical and verbal attacks, there has also been an increase in public rhetoric condemning Israel and attacking Jews. One of the worst examples of this hatred in New York City took place in November 2025 on the street outside Park East Synagogue, a prominent, historic Orthodox synagogue on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, a venue that has hosted popes numerous times, presidents numerous times, kings and princes numerous times from all over the world. Jews were verbally assaulted by haters. That night, Park East Synagogue was hosting an Aliyah event by Nefesh B'Nefesh. Pro-Hamas protesters blocked the entrance to the synagogue. They shouted vile, awful epithets at those entering and leaving. They shouted that Jewish attendees were mass murderers, that Israel should be wiped off the map, that Jews should be removed from positions of power. The most important and the saddest dimension of the dramatic increase in anti-Jewish activity is the brazenness with which it is delivered. Anti-Jewish messages seem to have made their way into mainstream public discourse. Hate speech has become acceptable Thankfully, there is one important bright light in New York City's establishment response. Julie Menin, Speaker of New York City's Council, has crafted a 5-point plan to fight this plague of Jew hatred in New York City. She has clout, she has money, influence, and she can effect change. As Speaker, Menin wields power. Julie Menin was elected to be Speaker by the City Council by unanimous vote of her colleagues. All 51 members voted for her at their charter meeting. She began her tenure then on January 7, 2026. It was historic. Julie Menin is the first Jewish Speaker of the Jewish Council of New York City. For Menin, this fight is personal. Her city is swerving into the danger zone. This is her plan. 1. Education, especially Holocaust education, increase protection of Jewish schools and institutions, and allocating $1.25 million to the Jewish Heritage Museum for educational programs. 2. Creating buffer zones, protest-free zones around synagogues, Jewish institutions, and schools. 3. Reimburse the cost of security for synagogues and Jewish institutions. Train them in security. 4. Pass laws making antisemitism illegal. 5. Create a New York City Council committee to combat hate, which will advance other initiatives to combat antisemitism and hate, and to educate future generations. This is a good and strong plan. It is a very good beginning and a working model. It has some faults, some things that are illegal. And over the next few months, I am certain that it will be refined and improved, hopefully not diluted. But wouldn't it have been nice if someone who wasn't Jewish would have had the guts and the gumption and the conviction to go to bat against Jew hatred, the world's oldest hatred? They have skin in the game too. Coming up next, Points of View. First up is a column from the Jerusalem Post published on February 21st, 2026 by Moshe Dan. Not so long ago, Moshe and I were very friendly, and this gives me a reason to reach out and catch up and say hello. The column is entitled Bibi's War, the High Stakes of Israel's Fight Against Hamas. Opinion, subtitled, The Israel-Hamas War began when the Muslim Brotherhood founded Hamas in 1988, during the First Intifada. Hamas's primary and immediate goal was to prevent any acceptance of Israel. This is how Moshe Dan begins. Despite all of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's many accomplishments, which should be recognized and appreciated, the Israel-Hamas war happened on his watch, and therefore, the war to defeat Hamas is on his shoulders, and it will define his legacy. The war didn't start with him, however. It began when the Muslim Brotherhood founded Hamas in 1988, during the First Intifada. Hamas's primary and immediate goal was to prevent any acceptance of Israel. That's why Hamas opposed the Oslo Accords and encouraged Yasser Arafat, chairman of the terrorist Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, and head of the Palestinian Authority, PA, to reject offers of statehood. Hamas also launched the Second Intifada, featuring thousands of suicide bombers, considered shaheeds, or martyrs, a behavior typical of those who follow its ideology. Moshe Dan lays out some very important history of Hamas, the PA/PLO, and what happened in Gaza after Israel left Gaza. He writes, the expulsion of the Jews from the Gaza Strip and the withdrawal of the IDF in 2005, the disengagement, was followed by clashes between the PA/PLO and Hamas in Gaza. Hamas won, establishing a mini-state under its control. Supported by Qatar and others, Hamas built a fortress entity with an elaborate tunnel system and, within years, had created a formidable army. By 2012, Hamas was able to attack Israel with missiles, and although the IDF responded, it did not eliminate the terror group or its military structure. Without a commission of inquiry, it is difficult to know who to blame for what happened on October 7th. Since Netanyahu was the prime minister, it's logical to assume that he is mainly responsible for Israeli policy, though many security and military leaders were also responsible for policies, for the way in which Israel conducted its war against Palestinian terrorism. Now Don explains that while the options are terrible, some are better than others. Some are worse and some are bad. War is hell, no doubt, but he explains. While wars are terrible, they often define reality and offer clarity. Israel's war with Hamas in Gaza, however, is complicated. Netanyahu's dilemma is the war in Gaza is that while Israel can contain Hamas as a military force and hopefully neutralize and perhaps even defeat it, Hamas has survived. It's well established in all UNRWA-supported refugee camps and works with the PA in Gaza. Here is the real crux of Moshe Dan's argument, and it's an important one. He says that if Gaza emerges as a Palestinian state now, it will become a Hamas state later. It's just a question of time. He writes, if Gaza is reconstructed as a Palestinian state, it's only a matter of time before Hamas returns. If the IDF remains in Gaza, the international community will be furious. The challenge is enormous. Thinking counterintuitively, Netanyahu's experience and perspective are unique. His determination and strong personality can provide the leadership that is necessary for stability and to defeat Hamas. His coalition is united and capable. Although many are unhappy with what he does, his critics offer no coherent strategy for ending the war and providing a vision for our future. Now Moshe Dan concludes. He gives serious perspective. He is cautiously hopeful. This is what he writes. Calling this war Bibi's war may be unfair, but it should help us focus on what is at stake. Despite making mistakes, we have also learned from them. The IDF can and must end the war in Gaza decisively. Jews and Jewish communities in the land of Israel and around the world can and must be protected. These are our priorities. They are essential to Israel's survival. The trauma of October 7th remains painful, yet Israeli society seeks to cope with its consequences and to heal. This tests our resolve, our commitment, and our faith. That is what makes this more than just Bibi's war. Excellent column. Thank you, Moshe Dan. Good to have you back on my radar. Next up is also from the Post, from the Jerusalem Post. It was published on February 21st, 2026, and it's penned by Mendy Shittrick. This is a spectacular piece about a subject many know little or to nothing about. That is why I selected it. People need to learn more about Jews and Islam. The column is entitled, As Ramadan Meets Purim, Jews and Muslims Must Choose Shared Humanity Over Fear. Opinion, subtitled, Purim commemorates the deliverance of the Jews in ancient Persia over 2,000 years ago. It is rooted in the broader Middle East landscape, where Jews have been part of this region since antiquity. This is how Shittrick begins. During my travels in the region, including a visit to Syria in September 2025, I heard elderly men and women, and even a senior government official, speak with quiet pride about how they once helped their Jewish neighbors observe Shabbat. They recalled lighting stoves, switching on lights, or checking in before nightfall so a family could rest without worry. These were not acts of diplomacy or dialogue. They were simply what good neighbors did, and they were not rare. This year, the rhythms of Ramadan and the Hebrew month of Adar move in parallel. Days of fasting, nights of generosity, and a festival of joy. In the wounded moment of our region and our world, their shared moral language invites us to discover our shared humanity. Of course, Shittrick has to tell some of the story of Purim and its meaning for Jews in the Muslim world. He writes, Purim commemorates the deliverance of the Jewish people in ancient Persia more than 2 millennia ago. It is a story rooted in the broader Middle Eastern landscape, reminding us that Jews have been part of this region since antiquity. For centuries, Jewish communities existed across lands that are today predominantly Muslim. From Morocco to Iraq, from Yemen to Central Asia, from Anatolia to the Balkans, and in many GCC countries. History is never without pain, yet Jews in Muslim lands experienced long eras of coexistence and cultural exchange that stand in contrast to the severe persecutions that marked much of Jewish life in parts of Christian Europe. This number is going to shock you. Shitrik is well aware of the numbers of Jews in the Muslim world and their condition, the condition in which they live. And the numbers are truly staggering. He writes, even today, approximately 100,000 Jews continue to live across 18 Muslim-majority countries. Their presence is not a relic of the past, but a living reminder that Jewish life remains part of the social, religious fabric of the Muslim world. In recent years, however, that fabric has been further strained. The war in Gaza has deepened grief and anguish across communities, intensifying fears and widening emotional distance between neighbors. Synagogues have been attacked, including arson, assaults in Tunisia. Religious leaders in the region have been targeted and killed. Across digital spaces, online bullying and anti-Semitic harassment have become commonplace, corroding trust and pushing communities into silence. Not surprisingly, this is me speaking, not surprisingly, Jews living in the Muslim world live in fear, and Shitrik writes about it. He writes, fear and suspicion often imported from conflicts far beyond the neighborhood, conflicts for which local communities bear no responsibility, can quietly erode relationships that took generations to build. Yet one truth remains unavoidable. None of our communities are disappearing. Jewish and Muslim communities are destined to share societies and futures. In the Middle East, in Europe, and across the Western world. We are all here to stay, together. If we must live together, then we must also learn to heal together. Now Shitrik refers to Ramadan and Adar, Purim, Muslim Jewish celebrations, which fall in the same period of this year, all in the same month. Shitrik writes, Ramadan and Adar both call us towards generosity and compassion. During Ramadan, Muslims fast from dawn to sunset, cultivating humility, compassion, and responsibility toward the vulnerable. Adar invites Jews to increase joy, give charity, and to ensure that no one is left hungry through gifts to the poor and shared festive meals. These values offer a path forward, not through conferences or declarations alone, but through daily interaction, a greeting, a visit, a respectful conversation, a meal offered with dignity. It is the ordinary expression of shared humanity that quietly lowers walls. Peace between people is not created by politics or negotiations. It begins when human beings recognize one another's dignity and treat one another with respect. This season invites simple acts. Jews showing sensitivity during Ramadan, refraining from eating or drinking in public where others are fasting, and extending charity to those in need. Muslims welcoming neighbors to iftar tables and strengthening bonds and hospitality while being mindful of the kosher rules. And their civic leaders ensuring that Jewish religion and Jewish citizens and residents are openly included and recognized as valued members of society. Familiarity reduces fear, and reduced fear makes cooperation possible. Shitrik wants to show that there is some element of healing and moving toward group reconciliation. I think he's optimistic, but it's worth noting. He writes, small acts do not erase pain, but they build the human fabric necessary for healing. The story of Purim teaches that hidden turns of history can lead to unexpected redemption. Ramadan teaches that patience, restraint, and compassion refine the soul and strengthen society. We must build bridges in our neighborhoods, in our civic spaces, and in our everyday lives. Healing will come not through declarations alone, but through encounters at shared tables in acts of kindness, and in the recognition that the other is also created in the image of God. Shitrik concludes with hope, and I think that it's ambitious, but it is hopeful. I'm hopeful too. Shitrik writes, one step at a time, without surrendering who we are, and while embracing the goodness we can share. Ramadan Kareem and Purim Sameach. This is an excellent piece. Thank you, Mendy Shitrik. As an aside, Kareem, which is what we say, Ramadan Kareem, is very common Arabic name, and in Islam also. We all remember Karim Abdul-Jabbar, Lual Sindar. The word Karim means benevolent or generous or noble. It is also one of the 90 names of God in Islam, because God is benevolent and generous. In this case, Ramadan Kareem is a blessing to have a fulfilling and bountiful Ramadan filled with God's blessings and gifts. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I want to show you 8 cartoons today. Many deal with Trump and his Board of Peace or his deal with Iran. With Trump, you know that it's always about the deal. First up, Trump is sitting around the table of the Board of Peace. The table is empty. No one's there, some turned over chairs, except he is sitting at the head. There's a huge aircraft carrier on the table, along with ships around it. The artist is saying that Trump's board is just Trump. The second cartoon is entitled Iran in Trump's Bullseye. It's by Tom Jansen from the Netherlands. The Ayatollah is in the middle of the target, and he's asking, Trump is bluffing. Isn't he? Big question mark. That's the question. This third cartoon is entitled Peace Angel Trump by Marian Kamensky of Austria. Trump is holding a dove, the dove of peace, with an olive branch burning in its mouth. Trump is about to set fire to the Ayatollah's beard. In the background, on the wall, is the stamp, the seal of the Board of Peace. Again, Trump calls the shots. Fourth up is a cartoon which is called Oil and the Straits of Hormuz by Iran Van Damme. Iran closed the Straits of Hormuz recently. They were involved in joint naval exercises with Russia. About 20% of the world's oil goes through the Straits every day. Iran was flexing their strength, their muscles. The amount, by the way, of oil going through the Straits of Hormuz has dropped over the last 3 years from 50% to 20% for this very reason, because Iran can close them at any moment. This fifth cartoon is entitled A Game and Two Gamblers by Marco De Angelis. The pictures on the dice explain everything. They match Trump in the US against the Ayatollah and Iran. It's scary, especially if it's a game of gambling with dice. This cartoon is called The Ayatollah's Nightmare. It shows the Ayatollah sleeping and seeing himself on the gallows, which are labeled Trump. That is a nightmare that probably haunts the Ayatollah constantly. This cartoon is entitled West Bank Annexation, Netanyahu Drop Pin Occupation. The artist is someone we know well because I show him all the time. His name is Ahmed Hajjaj. This was published in Al Arabi Al Jadid newspaper in London. The next cartoon is also by him. In this case, Bibi is placing location pins all over the West Bank and Gaza. In other words, Bibi's plans for Israel's occupation. Finally, this last cartoon is on the same theme, but they're the same artist. Israel expands control of the West Bank. 2 state flags. The Israeli flag is enveloping the Palestinian flag. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Iranian opposition channels, including Iran International and Toisi, reported that students from Amir Kabir University of Technology in Tehran are protesting against the regime again and blocked a street near campus. Footage circulated from the scene shows the students leaving the area while chanting, "Don't be afraid, we're all together." According to the reports, a protest is also taking place at Sharif University of Technology, also in the capital in Tehran, where chants of "Death to Khamenei" were allegedly also heard. Another report by Iranian International stated that the protest also took place at the Medical University in Mashhad, where students chanted "Freedom." Iran is exerting heavy pressure on Hezbollah to join the fight if US launches a military operation against it. Israel closely is monitoring the situation and has sent a clear message of warning to Hezbollah that if it decides to intervene, it will face a significant blow. The IDF has already prepared a plan for a significant strike against Hezbollah if they involve themselves. That was following the organization's rehabilitation over the past year. Iran, for its part, is carrying out a series of actions to increase pressure on Hezbollah, some of them under the radar. Among other things, last month, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi visited Lebanon, a visit designed to ensure that in the next war, Hezbollah fighters will not sit on the fence like they did this time. Steve Witkoff, U.S. President Donald Trump's envoy to the region, addressed the tensions with Iran in an interview with Fox News, saying, "I wouldn't use the word frustrated because he knows he has a lot of alternatives. But the president is curious why they haven't surrendered. Why, under this kind of pressure, with the amount of naval power we have there, why haven't they come to us and said, we declare we don't want weapons, and this is what we're willing to do?" According to Witkoff, it's hard to bring them to that point. The White House will award the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration, to Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds, who saved more than 200 American Jewish soldiers while held in the German prisoner of war camp during World War II. Edmonds was the highest-ranking soldier among the American prisoners held at Stalag 9A, and refused to hand over the names of Jewish soldiers to the camp commander, who were to be sent to extermination camps. He lied to the camp commander and said, "We are all Jews here," even when the commander held a pistol to his head. He returned to the United States after 100 days in captivity, died in 1985, and was recognized by Yad Vashem as righteous among the nations in 2015. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. I've been thinking about the Winter Olympics in Italy. Israel sent 9 athletes that competed in 5 sports and 11 events. It was historic. There was an embarrassing moment when the bobsled team was disqualified for faking an illness to allow for a replacement on the team. The Israeli Olympic Committee banned that person from competition for life. But let's watch one of the highlights. This clip is of Maria Sinuik. She's still very young and has a great future, tremendous potential. She has been skating since she was 3. Watch this video and enjoy. I told you she was impressive. I want to also wish everyone a wonderful, happy, joyous Purim. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.